everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of our Life Group videos. We are still in the book of Genesis. If you haven't seen the service from this Sunday, please go and watch it on our YouTube channel. We're getting to a point where God is getting to a climax and He is setting the scene for how His plan is going to come about. We've found that Noah's gotten off the ark, and God has given the same mission as He gave to Adam, to be fruitful and multiply. One of the significant differences that we see, though, was just before Adam, the pretext was God saw all that He made and it was very good. Yet for Noah, He says He can see the heart. He's no longer going to curse the ground because of man, because the heart of man is evil or has evil intentions from his youth. So we're entering in a very different pretext. So although they get given the same mission, we're also seeing something that stands out as we read this account. So if you will, please can you read as a group Genesis chapter 10, the whole of Genesis chapter 10, as well as Genesis 1 to 9. We're going to put a map on the screen for you so that you can also see the geographic locations that are being mentioned. So as you read, you can also refer to where these places are, because the Israelites of the time would have understood the significance of these people and the lands that are being mentioned. It's ironic that we find ourselves in, where just after the flood, we've seen God's judgments, God's wrath, God's power, and He recommissions man to obey Him, to be fruitful, to multiply. And man's response is, we're not going to obey that, but they rather try and make a name for themselves. It's about 3 generations after Noah, where his great-grandson Nimrod is born. And he is a mighty man before the people. In our day, we'd even refer to him as a goat, the greatest of all time. And everyone looks up to him and aspires to him, and he leads the people to gather, and they go in direct rebellion to God. Nimrod as a name actually translates to, let us rebel. So the people form a unity and rebel against God, trying to build a tower to reach God. And in this, we can see that God swiftly responds with judgment. But I would say that this is a judgment of mercy, because He could have easily responded with a judgment of destruction, He brings in a judgment of dispersion. Instead of treating them for how their sins deserve, God disperses them so His plan can still come about. And we can see that the people still ultimately obey what God has commanded of them, but they're not doing it willingly this time. Instead, they have to do it, or it's under compulsion that they obey God. And we can see even in direct rebellion against God, God's plans will still come about. But ultimately, we're comparing the heart of man in his pride, in his sin, great men building great cities, and God's immediate response, because they're not obeying Him, He brings in dispersion to them. And in complete contrast to this, we can see how God would do it in the person of Jesus. If we read Philippians 2, we can see the full humility of Jesus. He is a complete contrast in character to Nimrod and the people who are building Babel. And likewise, we are followers of Jesus now, and we are commissioned as His church. And so we are to imitate His humility, not in might or power, but in how He responds in gentleness and love to the people around Him. Now, Nimrod gathered the nations together to himself so that they can build a name for themselves, and they were going to reach the kingdom of heaven on their own terms. Yet when Jesus comes, He brings the kingdom of heaven to us. And it's no longer on our terms that we can approach God, because it was never possible for them, and it's not possible for us today. But now we can reach the kingdom of heaven through Jesus. And so the 3 questions that I have for us today is, number 1 is, in what areas in your life are you trying to make a name for yourself? Meaning, in what areas are you prideful that you're trying to be recognized for a certain skill or ability, that you're actually hoping people would recognize you and make a name for you in this area? And the second question follows on from that. It is, how are you going to surrender this area to the glory of God? How are we going to worship God in the skills and abilities He's given us, rather than for our own pleasure or for our own namesake? I think the challenging sentence for me is in the Lord's Prayer. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. How do you apply this to your own life as much as you're applying it to the rest of the world? How are you seeking for God's kingdom to come through you? How are you seeking to do the will of God? And before we get to our last question, please watch this gospel partnership video.
God's church is called to disciple the nations of the world. We believe we are entrusted with the gospel, which is the power of God to save. To this end, we are excited to announce this year's Gospel Partnership Conference. Already, we are looking forward to being joined by both local and international friends from Zimbabwe, India, and the United States. What can you expect at Gospel Partners 2024? There will be a youth event at Vantage Point Church, Rustenburg. We will have a 2-day intensive workshop working through the book of 2 Timothy. There will be sessions aimed at equipping all believers in various spheres of ministry. In the evenings, we will have a prayer and worship event and men's and ladies' meetings. There will also be opportunities to serve and go on mission with this gospel, both to Helen Joseph Hospital and in the annual Impopomo Sports Tournament in Zonsspruit. In addition, we will have friends from abroad ministering in our Sunday services. So, how can you get involved in these exciting events? There are 4 ways we need you to make this week a success. First, we call on everyone at North Point to pray that this will be a successful and fruitful week and that many lives and ministries will be enriched. Next, you are invited to attend the various events and serve everywhere you can. These events are for your benefit and equipping so that you can also faithfully hold fast to the gospel of truth. Also, your gifts can make each session, and especially the outreach events, effective and successful. Sign up at the Gospel Partnerships desk in our main hall or online at our website. Another way to be involved is to host a family or single person from another nation. We are looking for people who are able to give our guests an extra special stay in your homes so they can be comfortable and refreshed each day over the course of this week. Lastly, there is a substantial financial outlay toward the various components involved in this week. We are calling on you to give generously as we believe this will be for the extension of God's kingdom. All the info you need to be involved, including the daily schedule, will be made available on our website. We are calling on you to partner with us in the gospel with which we have been entrusted. Join us in this exciting mandate and let's trust God for His kingdom to impact the nations.
When Noah got off the ark, he got the same mission as Adam, to be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Before Jesus ascended, he gave us a new commission, that we should go to the whole earth and preach the gospel to every nation, to make disciples of all nations. And so one of the ways that North Point responds to this commission is through the gospel partnership. So my last question is, how are you going to be involved in the gospel partnership in 2024? Thank you everyone for joining us this week, and we just trust for fruitful conversations and that you guys would enjoy the weeks ahead.